coming tonight. We have City Manager Watson, Clerk Thompson, Safety Deputy Clark. We have Representative Dr. Times and myself, Vice Chairperson Isom. And I'm sure Commissioner Singleton's advice will be here soon. First thing on the agenda, and we got the public citizens out tonight. First thing on the metrics report.
Mr. Evans, could you hit the lights real quick? Thank you, Commissioner Isom. These are the update up through the end of March information on the finances for the city. Major operating cash accounts, I'm sorry. As you look, you see the general fund operating, showing that as of 3/31/2019, this is comparing 17/18 to 18/19. As you see that the, for the most part, we are better off,
Right.
with the exceptions of some areas which, for example, like the utility services, just basically from the standpoint of that was some grant money that had come in that we were receiving, that you see there that we don't have this year. So that's really the gist of it. If you look at the income tax, there is a big jump there from last year compared to this year.
All the collections coming in.
Correct. At this time last year, we had only had 2 months, roughly, and now we have the entirety of the collections from July 1 through March 31st. This is basically revenue and expenditures by fund. It's easier to see it on that slide. And what you see are the revenues actual versus the budget, the expenditures actual versus the budget. So we should be at this point, we are 75% through our fiscal year. Most accounts should be at 75%. For the most part, like with the general fund, we're at 67% on revenue, 69% in our expenditures. The major streets are 87% on our revenue, 40% on our expenditures in major, 60 in local. CDBG is 23% revenue, 38% on the expenditures, 50% on our utility services from the standpoint of revenue, and 72% in our expenditures. One thing I want to point out is in the CDBG, we received this month. This does not reflect the monies that we received for projects that we have done. So there's approximately $200,000 additional monies that have come in this month, which will be reflected in the next month's metrics report. General fund activities, again, year to date, revenues versus budgeted revenues. And this is comparing year, like last year, 2017-18 to 2018-19. So we're at 66% last year, we're at 67% this year. For our revenues, we were at 68% expenditures, 69% this year. So we're pretty much even for the most part on both of those activities. And this is just a delineation of all the different things that make up the general fund revenue. So, for example, property taxes at the top, we're at 90%. We get the lion's share of our monies for taxes in September. So the bills are set out in July, and they're due in September. City income tax, at this point, is anticipated that we're actually looking for the entirety of the budget for about $1 million. We're at about 55%, but that does not include what the refunds, that does not include the monies that have been submitted to us as in this month, as this is the month that the returns from the residents are due. So that number should be significantly increased next month. when we show the through April 30th. Grants, pretty much standard revenue sharing. It's been pretty much, 50%, 61% pilots, 87% charges for services, fees and fines, equipment rental, interest in rental, donations, and miscellaneous transfers in. So we should be, like I said, about 75%. We're at 67% revenues. So our revenues are lagging a little. And like I said, we will pick up some in our next month. Then understand also that our revenue sharing as well actually goes through through September. So what happens is, like I said, the revenue sharing that we typically get our last payment for revenue sharing is in September, even though we go July 1 through June 30th. So that comes from the state government. So that's how come that one is kind of a lag behind, because you got a couple extra months after our fiscal year ends that the money still come in. Expenditures are pretty flat for the most part. Again, 75% isn't optimal. Some of them are, like I said, some are ahead of it. Some of them are significantly behind. But for the most part, we're at, again, 69%, where we should be at 75%. So if we go back, while we look at 67% revenue, we've only spent 69% of our expenditure. So we're on target. We haven't spent like 85% we haven't expended 85% and only gotten in 60. Major street fund, again, last year versus this year is what this is looking at. For our revenues, we're at 87%. Our expenditures were at 40% in major streets. These are the expenditures that make up the major streets fund. And so, again, 75% optimal. This one, the bottom one, which is the allocation that we give to local streets from major streets, is really a monthly submittal that we give. It's equally dispersed over 12 months. So we're at 40% on the major street fund. How it might work. Something happened. I might go to all right.
The winter maintenance, we had a mild winter, so we didn't.
We had a mild winter, with the exception of a couple times when it snowed significantly. We just had one Sunday that we didn't anticipate. But we ended up going out and salting on Sunday because it got kind of harrowing there for a while. Now everything is frozen. Oh, there we go. Okay. Local street fund, we're at 87% revenue and 67% of expenditures. This is what makes up our local street fund. So you see the winter maintenance for that at 77%. Again, 75% is the total that we should be at. We're at about 67%.
What is
I'm sorry.
traffic service maintenance?
Traffic service maintenance is the stuff that we do for our traffic signals throughout the city. So that's delineated out to see how much money we spend on bulbs that need to be replaced, if there's shields or shrouds that need to be replaced. That's what that line item is for.
Nothing to do with stop signs?
No, that's a completely separate event. Community development, again, we're at 23%. I'm sorry. Oh, okay.
Yeah, on back on the local streets,
I'm sorry, I went the wrong way. Okay.
it was 67% expended out of that budget.
Expenditures, yes.
Okay, what is like some of the general things that we spend for
So in your expenditures, what typically it is, all your activities are split into major and local streets depending on what you do. So when you patch a street, it has a designation of a major or local street. When you do any kind of street sweeping, it's major local street allocation. So there's a 60-40 split. 60% of what you have in your system is local, 40% is major. So that's where that's how you determine when you're doing the work, you allocate it toward each budget that way.
That's what I was, question I was trying to ask. What do we, out of that percentage we spent on local? I mean, what was was it most of it the plowing or pothole filling or?
Most of the activities that we spend, the money we spend, the lion's share of it is on patching. We spend the lion's share on plowing. When we buy salt and sand, that's allocated against both of those as well. So what you see in here, some is materials. But like I said, most of it is any overtime that happens is against that, in that expenditure. So yeah, it's a cumulative of all the activities that we do through the Public Works Department. Community development, again, is one that we are continuing to work on to spend the dollars that we have. As you see, our expenditures thus far, $576,000 we've expended as we spend money toward making sure we meet the timeliness requirement. The revenues are lagging because, again, you expend it and you get reimbursed. We have we submitted a request for, like I said, about $200,000 and some odd thousand, $202,000 that will show up next month because it was received in this month. Okay?
Dr. Tom.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. In the CDG, so we have an additional 200 coming in. Now, there's going to be an expenditure on the Bobo Brazil Center. Is that also included in here? And this also includes the farmers market that was started some years ago with Tony Saunders and Winters, and we finally should be getting to completion. Is that also included here?
The farmers market will be, some of the farmers market thus far is in there. The finality of it is not. So once that is completed, it will be completed at the end of this month. That will be reported in the May's metrics report. As you talked about the armory, that's the other thing. That just got underway this month. So it will be reported in next month's, it's in the total, the dark green. That's the expenditures we expect to expend. But the actual work thus far is the hashed green, kind of olive color on the left, to the left of that number.
Right, Honorable Chair, so projected, are we going to exceed the 1.5?
We won't exceed the 1.5. Our intentions are to expend the entirety of the 1.5, which is the $400,000 for this year and the $1.1 million that was from 2014 through 2017. So that total is what you see, 1.5 million.
Honorable Chair, so what does that timeline on the expenditure, because we had a date that we needed to make sure funds were spent by?
May 2nd,
Okay, May 2nd, 2019?
yes.
Okay. Are we on target to reach that goal, Honorable Chair?
Yes, reported, if you remember, on Monday, we reported that at the commission meeting, our charge is to spend approximately $865,000 by May 2nd. The farmers market project is about a $250,000 project. The armory renovations, first phase, are another $100,000. So as you see, we've got 576. You add another $350,000 to it, that becomes $920,000, which exceeds what HUD said we had to spend by May 2nd.
All right, so, and then with the, and then for the fiscal year going for the summer of 2019, that would make sure that we would have funding, Honorable Chair, for summer jobs, so that we're not deficient this year with summer jobs. Would that be correct, Honorable Chair?
Speak on that.
That was not part of the annual, that was not a part of, one, the annual action plan for this year, and it was not a part of the overall redo of the annual action plans from previous years. There was some from last year, and that was what was spent. What we're spending now is what was approved by the City Commission accepted by HUD, and those are the activities that we're currently into right now.
So, Honorable Chair, clarification. Is there a commitment, is there money is going to be designated for summer jobs out of CDBG for the summer of 2019?
As it stands right now, with the plans that were approved, you cannot do that unless you have a public hearing and then reallocate it. So that would have to be
a
done.
public hearing to make sure that the youth will have summer jobs this year.
Will there be a,
Yes, I'm asking.
it's up to the commission.
So, Honorable Chair, can you forward, and I move that, I'm asking you, Honorable Chair, and the co-chair to move that this be brought to the attention of the body to make sure that the youth are placed as a high priority by the City Commission, and that we use these available funds, if possible, sir.
City Manager Watson, so it was nothing in that, that we agreed on about summer jobs?
There was for the initial part of this year.
Mm-hmm.
That was summer jobs for last year. This going forward for for the second part of the year, which is May and June of this year, there was not any money set aside at that point for a program that goes through September, October, which is a different fiscal year. So you have an annual action plan that you're coming up on in August that you have to do. You can do that at that time, retroactively, if that makes sense, for the upcoming allocation of community development block grant dollars.
Be for next,
But that would be for the remainder of the summer, starting July 1.
mm-hmm.
You would have to do it that way, or you would have to amend it and then get approval by HUD before you did it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, yeah, we gotta put our youth to work during the summer. I know there's a lot of youth out there in the streets, you know, so what's the process now? You need.
You would have to do one or two things. You would have to set up in the annual action plan to be approved for the program year of 2019, which is our fiscal year 2019-2020. You would have to set aside, allocate monies to have a summer youth program, summer youth employment program for the summer.
Mm-hmm.
And again, because the federal government is on an October 1 through September 30th, that would have to go to them, they would have to approve it. You could retroactively go back and pay for the time that we would, so July through September, you could pay for that. Or you can reallocate, go back to HUD and ask HUD to reallocate part of what you've already approved and they've accepted.
Mm-hmm.
You could ask for a reallocation and reset and set some money aside in that respect.
Summer jobs.
That is the privilege of the commission, if that's what they so desire.
What is the most expedient way to do it? Which one out of those two options?
They're kind of about the same. The thing is that if you do it now, you then can grasp, say right after they get out of school in June, and go forward.
Mm-hmm.
If you do it the other way, then they would have to start July 1 with your new fiscal year. So the kids get out of school, I think, June 10th or something in that area. So you're talking about 2 weeks worth of, they would start working July 1 versus starting work, say, June 14th. That's the difference.
There would have to be a process in place to hired them.
Correct, correct. And like I said, then you'd have to, you don't know how long a HUD, if you do an amendment with HUD, you have to wait on them to get back with you as well, so.
Yeah.
What if you put both plans to HUD and see which one they would okay?
We would have to set a public hearing because it depends on, you can only make an adjustment up to 15% of your allocation. Anything beyond 15% has to have a public hearing. So 15% of what we were allocated for this year is right around $60,000. Okay, because we've got 437,000, I believe is what the number was. So you would have to do 15% of that, which is about 60. Then you could say, okay, we want to make an adjustment up to that $60,000 or more out of that 1.5 that we had to do an amendment on back before HUD would allow us to get the new money for this year. So again, depends on how much money you're talking about spending. If you're talking about spending $150,000, $200,000, then what I would suggest is you make an amendment to what you currently have. And like I said, so then you have to do your public hearings, notice it, get the comment period, and then go forward. Either way, you're gonna have to have a public hearing.
Tough time.
Yeah, as for the historical record, the honorable chair was an individual who last year was instrumental, Commissioner Ashland, in advocating that for the summer of 2019, that the oversight that happened in 2018 without summer jobs that you had put forth and make Scott Sims aware at CBG that we would have something in place. And so the fact that we don't have it in place, I think that we need to do everything to honor what you had said in 2018 and honor the commitment of the commissioners to the youth. And there's not a problem with public hearings, that's not an issue. But I think with expediency that I'm asking this great committee and chair and co-chair that we make this a number one high priority. As stated by the youth, that because they didn't have the summer jobs, a lot of what was going on in the beefs wouldn't have happened if they had jobs and stuff to do. So we have to look out for our children. We have to look out for our youth.
Dr. Thomas.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. I'm just very disappointed at what I'm hearing, because for the past 2-3 years, this has been my topic, youth jobs for our children, before we had a young lady that left us placed in planning and economic development. The jobs for the children, and I kept stressing to the commission as a body of how hands-on we needed to be at the process of interviewing the youth for the jobs, to make sure that things were fair and just, and that it wasn't the same children every year getting jobs, but expanding. And I just can't believe that this is not happening. And I don't want anybody to make it sound like, from what I just heard, no disrespect, Dr. Time, make it seem as though we were irresponsible or neglected to do our job, because I for one have tried through planning and economic development committee meetings. And I'm asking this body, this committee, to please put something forward expeditiously to do some amending. And I guess my question to City Manager Watson is, does any of this include the $60,000 that the city of Benton Harbor had to pay out of its general fund back to HUD? Or is that something that's set aside to go into the next fiscal year?
So the $60,000, when this budget was put together, Commissioner, was not anticipated to be in this budget. So it is money, again, with community development block grant dollars, you are obligated to have, there's what they call a timeliness test that's done May of each year. What the timeliness test says is that at any given time, you cannot have more than 1.5%, 1.5 times what you were allocated, okay? So you have, the city of Ben Harbor got $437,000. The 1.5 test means that we can't have more than 600 and some odd $1,000. So we have, the numbers that we were given to spend down is 800 and some odd $1,000, 875, I believe, 65, 75 of that 1,512,000. That's what we have to have done by May 2nd.
Which part, which portion?
The 1.5 that says fiscal year 18-19, 1.5.
What would be the balance?
So you're talking about 600 and
Oh, I got a
1.5
project.
minus
I got some shovel ready.
875.
I got some shovel ready for our youth.
So at that point,
Homelessness.
you then, when the HUD comes in, looks at it, says, okay, yep, you're fine. So now you still have, as Commissioner Singleton just said, the $600,000 that you continue to spend, but you don't have to have that spent by May 2nd.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Okay? Yeah, that's what we have. But we have to make sure we hit that number
Okay.
on May 2nd.
Okay, through the chair, is it possible, City Manager Watson, through the chair, if we can still do some amending and add shovel-ready projects going into the next fiscal year and having these things in place? Which makes sense.
You can, again, you've got an annual action plan that you have to do for the next
Okay.
program year.
Okay.
And again, we don't know what that number's gonna be, that's what HUD gives us.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, we could start now and have our ducks in halfway in a row, trying to swim in the same direction. One last question. How is it determined, or is it some law that states what type of work the youth can do? Because I'm thinking now of how our community looks, and as a kid coming up, we didn't have a problem picking up shovels and rakes and using them. If somebody can answer that.
City Manager?
Yes, sir. This is the breakdown of what has been done thus far with the dollars that were allocated from the Community Development Block Grant. Excuse me. The debt service is just, that's the final payment of the Section 108 loans that we had to pay back. Rehab has been, that's that bottom line. My clicker went out, but with the delays running, but the debt service at the bottom is our payment to HUD to pay off the last of the, like I said, the Section 108 loans that we were obligated to pay back. And then, like I said, all the other ones have a dollar amount, and we're continuing to work on them. Again, 75% is what our goal is. At this time of year, we're at 38%. Again, there's some lag time, and you'll see the Army stuff come through. You'll see the farmers market stuff come through. You'll see other activities come through from rehab and things of that nature that will bolster that number. But it won't be until the next month's metrics report, because it's going on right now.
So back to the summer employment, out of that, you said about roughly 600 something thousand.
Yeah, 650, 675 in that area.
So to reallocate some funds, say up to maybe not to exceed $200,000.
Well, remember, Honorable Chair, Honorable Co-Chair, remember last year, the budget that the commissioners put together with Honorable Isom was that with over 200,000, you had 99 youth jobs and like 40 adult supervision jobs. So if you push that up to 250, there would be a cushion where you would at least guarantee 100 jobs plus, and also the adequate adult supervision, breaking it down to like almost 4 youth or more for an adult to try to keep it manageable. So I think, as the history has shown from this previous year, I think if we just not do 250 or a little bit better, and we can always not use, but definitely we want to make sure that we can take care of our youth So I think this year we should do at least 250 of that.
So get the ball rolling on, to do that, to not exceed 250.
Mhm.
What is the steps we have to do again?
We would have to make a petition to HUD for that amendment and explain to them what line items we're taking it out of, and what line item we're not gonna add it to, and the activity that's gonna be involved. And then secondly, once we make that petition, they'll tell us, okay, you have it now, you have to have a public hearing, and we have to schedule a public hearing for that. Once we do that, that then is submitted to HUD, the public comment time and everything, and then that information is deliberated on it at HUD's, on HUD's end, and then they give us the information back to let us know if they approve it or they disapprove it. But that's, approve or disapprove the amendment. Yeah, they won't approve, they won't disapprove the money, they'll just say if the amendment is something that they're approving for the city of Benard.
So Director Jennings will get it.
I can have that conversation with her and we can start that process.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Alderman Chair.
Utility Services Fund, at this point, we're at, last year we were at 63% revenues, this year we're at 50% revenues. The expenditures are 74 and 72%. What makes up that number is basically, again, the dollar amount. One of the things you have to look at is our debt service. We pay our water bond payments at one time. And so you'll see that in its entirety, it's set at 100% because of the fact that, it's asked for at a certain time. So that's a one-time deal. Water treatment is up some. Sewer and lift stations is really always a gamble. Because if you have a very active year in sewer backups, or if you have an active year where you have issues that occur, and we have had some this year, with what happened on Wakanda, and then what happened on Benton, were two that basically had come and that have made us again have some. That's why that number is a little bit higher than normal. If you look under water distribution, what that is, you see a $2 million number. That is anticipation of projects that are going to be done. So it shows as a big number, but that's reimbursable through grant dollars that we have. And so once projects are done, bid out and done this year, you'll see that number get closer to that dollar amount. But again, those are dollars that come back to us.
Is that part of some of the projects that we had, Abermarsh, the drain?
That's additional.
That's additional.
Those are additional projects. These are some projects that we have scheduled. There's a water main replacement on Clay Street from Pipestone to Ogden. That's in this plan. It hasn't been done yet. There is the anticipation of the FDCVT grant that we're going to have their water meters, the remainder of the water meters that did not get replaced with the SAW grant will be done in this project as well. So, like I said, you book them and show them in the distribution, but again, it will then be reimbursed to the city of Benton Harbor.
After the job is finished.
After the job is finished. We pay it and then they reimburse us. And that's it.
Can I please ask
You
Rania?
gotta come to the, looking all nice today. You gotta,
Just a quick question.
Commissioner Adams, how you doing?
I'm fine, sir. How are you all? Talking about the water, it's no longer there, but city manager watching through the chair. Does any of those address the matter of testing the water?
Yes, ma'am. The water treatment part, let me come back. Through the water treatment part of the budget attends to, let's go down here.
promise I won't stay on this long.
Okay, so the water treatment plant,
Mm-hmm.
that's where that activity would be booked.
Okay, the water treatment itself,
Correct,
okay.
correct.
Okay, I asked that question because I just recently had a conversation. I've been in touch with the people in Flint, and they're building an actual, testing center on the north end of Flint. And we are just very well connected. I have a lot of family members there. And upon talking with this young lady from Freshwater Future, they have 2 grants. Now, if this could be a savings to us, I'm hoping that it's something that we can actually take a look at. And they want us to inform the community and see when is a good time to have a community meeting on the matter, in which they can help, provide a service that may possibly save us some money, especially with everything that we're going to be doing in the future with the infrastructure and everything. The young lady, her name is Jill Ryan, I think, and she stated that they had 2 available grants, and they were looking at Chicago and Benton Harbor. And somehow I swayed this woman, please pick us. And she said, I have you on my radar. So I just wanted to share that, if we could keep that in our memory bank when it comes up.
Thank you, Commissioner Adams.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Duncan. Next on the agenda is resolution purchase of voting tabloid.
I'll just read the resolution.
Okay.
In 2017, municipalities in Berrien County were awarded a grant to purchase new voting equipment. The city received 5 tabulators with ballot boxes, 4 ADA compliant ballot marking devices, each with 5-year maintenance agreements at no cost to the city. As a part of the process, the state of Michigan procured the best possible cost for their equipment from Dominion Voting. The equipment scored highest on the state's evaluation, and over half of the counties in Michigan utilized Dominion as their election equipment. The equipment is manufactured and made available through Election Source in Grand Rapids. On November 6, 2018, Proposal 3 was approved by the voters. This proposal allows for no reason absentee voting. As a result, clerks are preparing to accommodate the anticipated increase in absentee voting by purchasing more supplies and additional equipment. This necessitates the need for the purchase of an additional voting machine. Currently, if there are issues with any of the other tabulators, the city would have to wait until a replacement could be brought from Grand Rapids. Moreover, an additional tabulator could be used as a backup or temporary replacement and maintain the flow of processing voters. The recommendation is for the Personnel and Finance Committee to recommend to the full commission the purchase of a voting tabulator from Dominion Voting in the amount of $5,295.
Thank you, Clerk Thompson. Sure, it's a need that something we must have, so.
Yes.
Well, look,
Commissioner Adams.
I don't know everything, and I don't have all the answers. But when I was reading over that documentation, which is why I'm an elected official and that's my job, and just thinking about it, when I saw it, I'm like, we just bought some. And I get it that it's an extra one. Well, last year, year before, but we were reimbursed.
We received the grant, we didn't pay, it was at no cost to the city. So
Right. But I remember, I'm like, with this voting thing going on nationwide and the skepticism that comes along with it, I'm remembering that when Mitt Romney ran, that it was actually it was his son that were the business owner of the machine made. And when I was just compelled to look into where this tabulator come from, and it came from made in Canada, yet the papers stated that it was Ohio.
No, this actual,
I actually Googled and searched it.
it was manufactured in Grand Rapids.
Really?
And we have to go, the state, we selected this in 2017, and we can't deviate from what
Okay.
we initially purchased, so we have to go with it.
But it would be good to have an extra one, I guess, if we break
We'll
down.
need it for, we don't know how the no reason absentee, how that's
Yeah.
gonna turn out. And then if a machine breaks down, we would have to wait for someone to come from Grand Rapids to bring us. We can use this as a backup machine as well.
Okay, this is a perfect opportunity for me to ask a question, because that's something else that I'm thinking, that looking at our city charter, that the elected officials need to be more hands-on. At least that's what the city charter states with the elections. And nobody has shown any interest amongst us, but me. And I can't do it alone, and I can't do everything, but just holding everybody accountable. What is it that we can do to also have a paper trail on the ballots, other than a tabulating machine? I mean,
We have a
go
paper
on,
trail. I mean,
just a question.
For every ballot that's accounted for, we have it in our system. So, I mean, that's a paper trail there.
Okay. The voting registrations themselves? Okay, okay, okay. Thank
Also
you.
have to be sent back, sent
Don't mean
to
to be
the
so
county
inquisitive, but
for
I am.
certification.
Yeah, and we actually retain the ballots for a certain amount of time.
Also mentioned too that especially 2020 coming up.
With the presidential election.
Presidential election, it's always high turnout, so it'd be good to have.
We'll need it.
Yeah.
Concur.
So moved.
Next on the agenda, resolution contracting with F&B Operations Service and Resource Management.
Thank you, Chairperson Knight. So the city entered into an administrative consent order with the state of Michigan Department of Environmental Quality. As a condition of the ACO, the city is required to have a water system distribution foreman. The city has run advertisements for this position several times to no avail. F&B Operations Services and Resource Management is a company that provides contracted services for a variety of specialized positions. The city has used F&B previously as the operator in charge of the water filtration plant. The cost of service for distribution foreman is $2,133 per week with a 120-day termination clause. Recommendation is that the Personnel and Finance Committee recommends the full commission contracted with F&B Operations Services and Resource Management to provide a water system distribution foreman for the city of Benton Harbor.
My first question is, City Manager, what do, Mike,
I do it, all of it.
so, would
Well, we
you
went
bring
in-
some clarity on this?
I can explain it very simple.
Okay.
The state of Michigan, there are different levels of operators. There's distribution and there are water filtration. Mr. O'Malley happens to be one of the unique individuals in the state of Michigan that holds both sets of licenses. The city, the state of Michigan has allowed us to utilize Mr. O'Malley as the distribution foreman license, as well as the operator in charge of the filtration plant. They are now telling us that we need to separate the two because of the amount of responsibility on both those positions. In what was identified in the ACO, it's going to require Mr. O'Malley kind of to just go in the water plant and stay there for a while. But at the same time, you have an obligation out in the distribution system that we have to attend to turning valves, making sure hydrants are done, cross-connection programs. So they're saying that Mr. O'Malley is overworked. You need to separate the two and have a person that is responsible in the distribution and have a person that's responsible at the water treatment plant. State of Michigan says that. Yes, sir.
$2,691 per week.
$2,133 per week.
Oh,
Which add up annually,
To about $100,000 a year. So here's the deal. What we're going to do is, while we have to have this person, what we're going to continue to do is look for a person to replace them. But in the short term, we've got to have a person on file with the state of Michigan as our distribution foreman. So it's not that you gotta have them for a year, you got a 120-day termination clause. That's why that's mentioned in there, which is roughly 4 months. So if you go with this dollar amount, you have to give them 4 months' notice that you're going to terminate the contract. You get out the contract, you have your own person. That's what we're willing to do, we're trying to do.
So we put out a job search for this?
We have.
Nothing?
We have put, this has been out 2 to 3 years. Yeah, we keep putting it out. One of the challenges that we have is, again, the private sector pays a little bit better than we do. And a lot of people, thank God that Mr. O'Malley came back from a private sector job to take a public sector job here in the city of Benton Harbor. There are a number of companies, really there's 2. One being Severn Trent and the other one is Fleece Vanderbrink, which is F&V. F&V is the lower of the 2. Severn Trent's a little high. So that's what we're proposing to do. This is really a short-term fix to accommodate and get what's required of us in the ACO.
So the state's saying we need this requirement, what if we don't move on it? Is some kind of penalty? Some kind
They could impose penalties on this, absolutely.
And this person will move to the city, to the area?
This person will be here
40 hours a week?
pretty much, 40 hours a week. There is no requirement that they live here.
Oh, okay.
We can't force them. The law says as long as you can get to work and perform the duties in the time that the employer says, you can work. You can live in Escanaba and come here to work. That's not an issue. But this gentleman is, from what I'm understanding, is in this area. He's currently working in Indiana. So that's what we're asking to be done in the short term.
That'll help better the quality for our system that we have, the water distribution, O'Malley at the plant.
Correct.
And this person to be out.
The one that handles if there's a main break, they would handle that, where Mr. O'Malley would not be called to do that as well. If there was there's a fire hydrant that gets knocked over, they would attend to that. That's why if you look at the agreement, it talks about they would be an employee of Fleece Vanderbrink, but they would be allowed to work here. And basically they'd have a vehicle and things of that nature. We would have to provide for them the opportunity to do their job.
Ms. Singh?
So, all the benefits and all that stuff is handled through there. The only thing we'll be paying is
Is that salary. All his benefits, medical, dental, all that is handled by the company.
workers' comp and all
All that's handled by the company, yep.
Dr. Khan?
Yeah, Honorable Chair, with asking, if possible, Mr. Malley, what his perspective on it and in terms of his seeing the workload, to in terms of the time of implementation that this ACO needs to be implemented, at least giving the members also of this committee time to review the ACO. So sometimes there's, now that we've been made aware of it, 30 days, 60 days to try to get the position filled. Also, is it possible, again, when we have an experienced gentleman holding 2 certifications for his input in this, and is there any ideas coming from him as another way, or any recommendations also to accomplish this? Because this is also a very, very expensive position, and I mean, private sector, that's still a 6-figure job. Yeah. So I'm asking Honorable Chair, one, the timeline that we have, at least sometimes anywhere from 30 to 90 days to try to get the position filled, without, in terms of allow for review, also input from Mr. O'Malley in terms workload and any recommendations that can help the city in fulfilling
I
this.
didn't know until this.
So just having his input.
And what, if you, one of the things that the ACO did was give us some timeline. The timeline on this one is May 1st,
Won't be here, done.
to do this.
You don't meet till May 5th.
Yeah.
Or 6th.
Yeah, but again, we have talked with the state regarding the May 1st. And if we needed the time to do it, we could get the time to do it. As I said, it's not that you can't find someone to do it. It's that the state's not gonna continue to say, okay, we're gonna give you more time, we're gonna give you more time, we're gonna give you more time.
How long do you think they'll give us?
That's a good question.
You only need 2.
The job search been out 3 years.
It's been out almost 3
Yeah.
years now.
3?
Yeah,
Wow.
Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay, the second part of my question was for Mr. O'Malley making a comment.
It's a waste of time, right?
I'm a waste of time. Thank you very much.
Mr. Malley, you got
I
something
wasn't
to
talking
say?
about you.
I'll come back.
Hey, wait a minute, I didn't say that.
I'm sorry.
He wasn't talking to Malley, we're gonna,
You want me to do
you
something?
speak on this?
Oh, great. Thank you.
The sanitary survey from 2018 was pushed through in a very quick manner to attack the city of Benton Harbor for the lack of being able to function correctly. If you recall, we had 6 public notices. I spent an inordinate amount of time outside the water plant. There were times when I would be in the water plant occasionally for 10 minutes. But things started going wrong, the state came around. This fellow is also gonna have to assist me in terms of the water distribution, the sanitary sewer collection and movement, so that's a good 2 days a week. And the stormwater projects that we need to take care of. He has to be licensed for the water. There are no other real licensing requirements for the other 2 functions. I've gotten pretty good at it, but I can't be everything to everybody 10 hours a day, 7 days a week, which is what I have basically put in since July 2016, except when I went into the hospital.
Thank
Do
you.
you want anything more?
No, that's it. Thank you, Mr. O'Malley. Commissioner
For the
Adams.
recommendations, you have any recommendations of any individuals other than this company?
We can't find anyone.
We
That's not news.
April 17th.
Severn Trent is the company that I left when I got thrown out of Benton Harbor. That's the company I went to. So, and I made a considerably higher salary. I'm working for the salary that Stuart Beach got when he took my job away from me in 2012.
Thank you, Mr. O'Malley. Commissioner Adams. Commissioner Adams.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. My question is, we've been looking for somebody to fill this position for 3 years, was it?
Right.
Did I hear correctly? And this is a salary job? Did I hear that correct?
No, this one. would be-
Okay, it's a paid position though.
Yeah.
Okay, and we got a rough figure about how much that is. Is this something that was budgeted into our budgets along the way? So I guess my question, because I'm gonna hear it from somebody that may be looking at this and wondering, well, what happens to the money? Cause I'm tired of people in this community thinking that somebody down here stealing. But that would be a good question to answer.
That's.
I mean,
that's
when we budget something and at the end of a fiscal year, that money has not been utilized, what happens?
So the easiest answer for that, Commissioner, is one is the budgets from year to year. Unlike CDBG we talked about earlier, stop at the end of the year. So they don't roll over. So you don't get an extra $45,000 in the next year if you don't spend $45,000 this year. That is then reported in your audit at the end of the year, and you get a fiscal health report. The other thing about it is that the water plant, the water fund is what's called an enterprise fund. The enterprise fund says that you can only have enough money to operate and pay for what you do. So you don't get an extra money for the next year so that, again, you get extra money. No, that doesn't happen. That's not government accounting.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just have a quick question about the other staff that work there. And I know it's been, you said 3 years?
Yes, ma'am.
Is there a way possible to send one of those other staff to be licensed in that? Because I know that there's other staff members. Is there a way to license, to actually look for people to go to school in that particular area or license one of the other guys?
We have sent and paid for training, testing for as long as I've been here.
Wow.
There is no one who has passed the test, even with the training, or has the aspiration to do it. That's the second part. Even with incentivizing them with the dollars of bonuses for the license and incentivizing them with a higher rate of pay, there is no desire that used to be present in the water department.
So could you tell me what that license specifically is so that we can, I don't know, I understand 3 years is difficult. Is there a way to partner with the schools, with the technical programs, with the local colleges to actually specialize or help us to bring people into that field? Because it sounds like it'll be one of those fields that'll continue to grow because people will have issues with water, especially in the state of Michigan and other places.
Here's what you're facing, Commissioner Henderson, and everyone. Because of the scrutiny that has happened in the water area over the last 5 years, people are reluctant to do it because it's a responsibility. That if you take on that responsibility and something happens, as you saw in what happened some time ago, people were criminally charged. People are doing this. We don't want that responsibility. It's the same thing that's happening with public safety. You've got people who would say, yeah, I want to be a police officer. Now with all the advent of social media and the negativity around policing, that aren't doing it. We have reached out. Mr. O'Malley's been in water over 30 years. He's reached out to people that he knows to ask them to come. They're not coming. They're not coming.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Seats.
I'm away from Mr. O'Malley, you've got a lot of information.
Thank you. Question to the city manager. You have your license in that? I thought you had.
Mine expired. I had an S2 license. Mine has expired. Yes, sir.
How hard is it to get that back?
Just take pre-tests over.
Yeah. I'd have to take them all over again.
They're offered twice a year, one at a time. Well, actually, you can take two.
All right, so how often you do that?
The lower level licenses are offered.
Point of order, let's talk.
Oops, I'm sorry, I'm not allowed to talk.
Yeah, no, sure, he knows that. Just come to the right.
Yeah, so here's the thing. I would have to go back and take the test over again to recertify myself.
Do you think that by chance, through the chair, that if you get recertified, will the state back down because we then have 2 people with certification?
No. And the reason why is what they want is someone who's out there every day. That's the challenge. Is that what would have to happen is a person would have to work under my license, but if something was to get messed up, just like with Mr. O'Malley, if something gets messed up, we are held responsible for it.
All right.
To the chair, who was the last licensed person that we had working? Because 3 years ago, we had to have somebody there. Who was it?
Stewart Beach.
Was V.O. Lester? Was he
He
licensed?
was not licensed.
Was not licensed. So
He was working under the license of another individual.
now Stewart Beach, was that the young man who passed away through the chair?
No,
We in Detroit.
no.
Oh, he left and went to Detroit.
Yeah.
Is there any way possible?
He works for F&B.
Who we work for?
F&V.
Oh, I think they, all right, thank you.
Come on.
Through the chair, is there any way we can put that out again, and do, cause I hear a lot of times we got jobs posted, but I don't know where we can locate them at. Is there like, do we go to the municipal, league, or is there other municipalities who might have an up and comer who might wanna come, and, I mean, how do we get it out to other municipalities that this job is open? Cause I know there's some young men in the township, I wonder if they're licensed, but they will come, I think one of them was a former employee of the city of Benton Harbor, and if I'm not mistaken, I don't know if he is licensed now. I know he, Lauren,
Johnson,
Lauren Johnson,
he's licensed in the
He ain't
water side,
coming.
the water side,
he's licensed on the water side.
filtration side.
Well, you can't say people not coming unless they get the right amount of money.
I can talk to him,
All right.
he ain't coming.
Well, hey,
Through the chair.
Thank you.
hey, Chair,
Thank you.
you might want to put the police at the back door.
Commissioner Singleton.
He did a good job.
Yeah, I just, just listening to it and the situation, and then what I heard from, Mr. O'Malley, it do sound like that he, is getting burned out, doing both of the jobs. And then what, I don't know if Mayor Pro Tem was here when you stated that, it's a 120-day notice.
Termination notice of the contract.
So we put out, if you got started with this person, you still search for a permanent person, you got 120 days,
correct.
once you determine that you got somebody.
Correct.
Yeah. And it's almost like a rock and a hard place, you know, that you at, you know. You can, hope for some extension, but at the same time, with the extension, you burning this guy out, and then you got two positions you have to. So, you know, with that 120-day out, I guess, you know, like I say, when it was rock and a hard place, you know, the commission had to make a decision.
We, put it in the newspaper, do we have some kind of,
We put it in the newspaper, we put it on the website, we put it in the AWWAs, which is American Waterworks Association, which is a specialized group of people who do this particular work. We put it on the Michigan Municipal League, we put it on Indeed, we put it pretty much everywhere you could think about. Again, it is, water treatment is a dying art right now.
Dying breed.
Yeah, what you're seeing again is, years ago, the state would have allowed Mr. O'Malley to do it and function in that position and wouldn't have said much of anything. The DEQ is a completely different animal now. That is not as much about helping as much as it is about enforcing now. You get hammered. Yeah, it's what if you want to call it the Flynn effect, that's exactly what it is. That if they are going to come at you, they're going to ask you to do something, they'll ask you for some results. If you don't do it,
Accountability.
they're going to come after you. With like I said, whereas before they would say, okay, we understand the situation, we may work with you, give you 6 months to a year, go, let's just do that. No, not anymore. They come in with a heavy hand now. Very heavy hand.
Commissioner Hill?
Thank you. Seems like we got a problem. If something would happen, no reflection, if something would happen to him today, where would we go from here? With nobody to take his place.
We would have to do what we're doing right now.
After 3 years, you've been doing it for 3 years? And nobody?
We've been doing it, and like I said, the state has allowed us to do it. Now they're not going to allow us to do it anymore. We have, the thing about it, Commissioner Harrelson, the gentleman who used to be our district engineer, was a great guy for the city of Benton Harbor, has now left the state of Michigan and gone to work for a private industry. But the person that took his place is not. If it says you gotta have 2, you gotta have 2. Not 1.5, not 1 3/4. you must have 2 people. That is what the state is saying to us. We've gotten grace because of the fact that our district engineer was working with us. Now, since they've enacted new lead and copper laws, they've enacted new enforcement laws, they are coming at municipal water supplies just because of what happened in the city on the east side of the state.
But you say they does not have to live in the city of Benton Harbor to come to work, right?
Correct.
But is there anybody know anywhere that may have license that they come to Benton Harbor? Because that's a lot of work for Mr. O'Malley, for one person.
Agree. Agree with that.
And for this to be a city and not have the accurate help that we need, that's pitiful.
Commissioner Harrison and the general public, we have, again, had to do an inordinate amount of work with less than what we need. We have a need for a lot of bodies. But if you don't have the money to accommodate a lot of bodies, and you can't pay the going rate salary for those lot of bodies, you have to do what you gotta do with what you got.
Can't work one man to death.
Understand?
Mr. Henry?
I just need a little clarity again on how much money is, and is this a one person or a firm? Do we get more than one person out of his firm, or just this one person?
This is for a person to come here.
And how much is it again?
It's
Yearly?
It's $2,100 a week.
$2,100.
Which is about $100,000 a year.
And it would be more than that if their insurance. I'm sorry.
Okay.
For the contract, the accountant's policy still.
And to just, so it also affords us access, it's a contract with the company. There'll be a main point person, if that makes sense.
Now you should not, he's not gonna utilize any more people out of his firm. Wow.
That he's not gonna use, what do you mean when you say?
He's gonna be our subcontractor, and no one else from the firm is going to work in our water plant, distributing or water.
What I've asked them for was that I asked them to provide us with some additional bodies to get us started. And they've been in agreement to that. So what we're going to get is a team initially with one person that's going to be designated to do the distribution foreman, but we're going to get extra bodies to help us get a hold of and a handle on stuff that we need to get done in the distribution system. So turning valves, flow testing, fire hydrants, things of that nature that we just don't have active bodies to do currently, they're going to help us with, and then when we move forward, they'll wean off, and then we will have just the one person. But like I said, the thought is, as we're doing this, we're still looking for somebody to take their place so we can give them a 120-day notice so they can be gone, and we can stop the dollar amount.
Okay, so right now we're gonna get the assistance of this firm, and there's not too many firms in the whole area but these 2 or 3. But I remember back some while ago, we were really trying to get our own people in. And I've heard some horrible stories, and I never found out if they were true or not about what was going on in the water department. But I understand most of those guys and ladies are gone now. Do we have a new crew in the water in the water department, either the water plant or the distributing part of it?
In the water plant, the 2 operators that are currently there both have over 20 years.
Okay.
We have a gentleman who is there as the maintenance worker and a gentleman who is the maintenance foreman. And then there's Mr. O'Malley, who runs the entirety of the operation. And then in the distribution, we have Mr. O'Malley, and 3 current workers, 3 spots. We have 2 current, we've got 1 that we're trying to fill, that work under that, in that area. So they attenuate to just distribution.
Just distribution.
Yes, ma'am.
So a total for distribution right now is
3.
3.
Yeah.
And for the water plant is,
1, 2, 4. There's 4 total.
and exactly what will this new firm person hire? Do any kind of that, or
They won't do any hiring, any firing, anything of that nature. Their purpose is to provide the spot that we need as a supervision and be the operator in charge, if you will, of the distribution system. They'll coordinate the work. They will do all that to say, well, here's what we need to do. This we need to do. If we're going to do this week, we're going to turn valves in the first ward. Do that, record keeping, things of that nature. They'll perform that duty.
okay. Now, I guess I want to ask if, now, I'm asked this question outside. I need to know what the qualifications of all of the people that are there now. I'll get that from you later.
Okay. All right.
Wow.
Nah, he's okay. Trust me, he's all right.
Yeah,
He's okay.
you just tired.
He's okay.
But, you know, I heard a little chatter in the audience about the cost of it. Somebody talked about $1 million.
No.
It's about
117,000 a year.
Yeah.
So basically, now you saying they would provide some extra folks in the beginning? Is that included in the 2,000? Or do we have to pay extra money?
We're not paying extra for it. We've worked, as I said, when Mr. Beach left the city, when Stuart Beach left and went to work for this company, we had to use F&V at that time to have an operator in charge at the water plant. And at that time, Mr. O'Malley was working for another company that does this called Severn Trent. I think he was in an airport or somewhere, and he called and said, you know, are you still looking for a operator? And he came back. But that's really what's going on with that. So F&V again has the gentleman that I talked to, Blair, is he wants to help us. They brought in people when we had the person out at the water plant. Additional people came in to help us when we needed to pull pumps on the lift stations and do maintenance and upkeep on that. They understand that we don't have a lot of bodies, and he's willing to give us extra help to let him know projects that we need to be done.
With the what I think is a underlying issue, they probably trying to eventually try to take over the water plant, so in order to save our assets, I think this money would, you know, if you look at it, even 6 months, you know, you're talking about roughly $60,000, but yeah, I think that's really small when you look overall, the overall picture of what possibly trying to happen. You know, that $60,000 really ain't that a lot of money to save on our biggest assets. So.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Yep, sound like common sense costing us about $2,100 a week. I do agree, and that's what I would say also, Commissioner Singleton, through the chair, that I think it's the attempt to assume if you can't maintain it, then we take it over. Then it goes to another municipality who already got it in place. We'll start overseeing one of your few and last remaining assets. I think it'll be money well spent, because then there's another layer of accountability. Because if they're gonna start keeping records and data, a lot of stuff we don't have, a lot of stuff we don't know where it's at, where it's supposed to be. That'll be another layer of accountability I think we can have. And also for when you spend money and get a contract or somebody in there, you can hold them accountable for what they're expected to do. Only thing I don't want to happen is that we start having moonlight hours to where, you know, they're not here or we hire them and they're working not regular hours, because that's what I'm seeing with a lot of these other positions that we've quote unquote filled with contractors, and we thought they were employees, but they're really contractors and they work moonlight hours. But I think it's good that we have that other layer of accountability and to save the water plant from the DEQ, because when they start coming and investigating and start citing you with stuff, you want to hurry up and get that taken care of, because you don't want to be in violation with them. The next thing you know, they'll say you don't need the water plant, which I was told that by Al Ashoka about 4 years ago, that they were doing a pilot program in another city, and if the pilot program worked over what they were doing it at there, they were going to plan on doing it here. But things, I'm not saying thank God for Flint, but it didn't work in Flint, so if Flint was the first shot at it, you know. I mean, and I think a lot of us, and you can still tell the way we walk and talk, that we got post-traumatic EFM disorder. You know, we still trying to deal with what happened with EM and the EFM and FM and all these other people. So what we need to do is, I think, just move this forward, because you can't play with the water plant, because for long, only thing we own is the chairs that we sitting in. And you have to bring them. Thank you.
There's two things, Honorable Chair, thank you. One is, per the charter, is this, one, being an employee, to make sure there's no discrepancy, that does this charter allow, see this as an employee, or does it allow for a firm? And if it does allow that this is to be treated as an individual, and that individual cannot hire or any other bodies, or that this firm cannot add additional costs, that make sure that the contract is read and that it's closed, that it's just providing this service, and no matter, all it is a service agreement, and therefore whatever they put there is fixed to this particular salary that was agreed upon. So if they put 10 people, 100 people, there's no additional cost to the city. And if that's in place, then I move with the Mayor Pro Temp that we move it forward to the body.
City man, this is the fixed rate.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
How many bodies they threw on there?
Correct.
Thank you.
Correct.
One more question, Chair.
Commissioner Henry.
One more question. I'd just like to know, how long have you been working on this? May the 1st is almost a crisis. How long have you known about this issue, and how long have you been working on it?
3 years.
And May the 1st is the deadline?
That's what the state has given us as a deadline. We've been trying to fill this position for, like I said.
Well, I understand that. If you've been trying to fill it longer than 3 years, because I can go back and remember when we lost one and we only had one and we were working at it. You've been looking, the city's been looking
The
longer.
city's been looking long, yeah.
And
Actually,
I'm asking you.
not really, Commissioner, because the last person that we had, Tom Spitzner, was here in 2014. So he was the last.
I missed him because
Yeah.
the state was in here doing their dirty work then, so I missed him. But I know we've been looking, but my question is, if you've been working, you knew that the DEQ has had changed its rules, but here it comes to us 2 weeks before the deadline. And I'm always conscious that we're always in a crisis when we have to make a decision. And that is not fair to the citizens, and it's surely not fair to the elected officials.
Commissioner Henry, this is, you say it's a crisis. All the legwork has been done. It's not a crisis. It's, I'm giving you all the information for a decision to be made. If you don't want to do it, if you don't want to do it this way, that's fine. we go back to the DEQ and tell them we need to extend the time.
Let's do that.
But at the same time, the gentleman behind you continues to work.
I understand that.
Yeah, so, yeah.
I'm just making a statement of feeling here about projects that are brought to us, and it's always a 2-week deadline. The last project was brought to us and said May the 1st was the deadline. Here's another May the 1st, that's the deadline. When did DEQ
Mr. Conway.
change?
Oh, why we just can't do this? Why Michael Nally can't go out in the field and then they hire somebody for the water plant? How much that cost? If we switch it up like that.
That's even more. Because filtration people are really a dinosaur now. A filtration, if you want to get a person to work in the water filtration plant strictly, I'll give it to you like this. The last time last year, you only had 11 people who took the F1 license test. When we were coming up, that was a couple hundred people. There ain't a lot of people going into water filtration. And the ones that are already have their F1 either are retiring and going into consulting or staying where they're at. Because they know you can't find any more. So yeah, Mr. O'Malley could go out there, but again, there's more criticality in that aspect of it than it is in the distribution side of it.
Right, but would it be $2,100?
It would probably be closer. It would be more than that. Yeah. Yeah.
Through the chair, just very quickly, thank you, Chair. Is this a part of environmental teaching?
Yeah.
Okay, I just asked because it sounds like going forward that we need to be trying to do something to entice some of the youth into going into this field of work, and the Brownfield Authority Board put together a scholarship, and if they need to up the ante for a graduate to help take care of whatever it costs, as long as they do what they supposed to do and come back to work for Ben Harbor. I mean, if that can be worked out that way, but seriously, we really need to think about that, and that's up to this day. We put this scholarship in place probably 10 years ago, and nobody has utilized it. And I try to post it every year and put it out in the community, and to no avail. But now that we got a purpose, yeah. Yes.
To the chair, I'm just gonna speak for a few minutes. I have that exact letter that came from the DEQ that was dated October the 18th. That particular letter that they're speaking on where they're making these changes was signed, it was never brought before the body of commissioners. This letter was signed by the mayor. Okay, I have a copy of it from the DEQ as well as a letter from the attorney saying you should have took this before the commission. The lawyer responded to the city manager as well as to the mayor in this correspondence in which I have, and I say this because, just like she just spoke on, it's always a deadline to get something done. Whenever you come up with people giving you all this content, it becomes a con. That's facts. And so all of these things that were laid out, they had previously known already. So when you talk about getting something done, sometimes you have to go outside of the city. This is the job, when we have a person that's managing the city, he do what's in the best interest of the city. And a lot of times we have to go outside the city because fair exchange has never been a robbery. And a lot of times when we deal with entities that are within this municipality in which we live, it becomes a robbery. And so we have to be very careful when we make these decisions as we move forward. When I was in the water plant, I had to get an F1 and an S1 license. Then I got it in my pocket because that was the requirement. And I say that to say this. Anytime you work with individuals, you have them in certain areas and you're not training them or sending them off to the state of Michigan to get these licenses, this is where the breakdown come in. And then you bring people in that don't have your invested interest at heart, okay, and are not working in the best interest of the community. And so we have to be very careful when we make these decisions. And I'm telling you, that letter it had been out. I got a copy of it. And a copy from the attorney where he told me he should have took it before for the commission. They don't have a clue. But you signed it saying that you had a deadline. That's what it's always about, a deadline. I got a copy of the letter and a copy of the letter from the attorney that's informing them they should have took that before the commission. The same thing he explained to you right at this moment.
Thank you.
Hold on just a second. Two things. Number one, that I'm sitting here holding in my hand the document, the ACO. The date on this is March 8th that it was sent back. It was signed on February the 25th.
What year?
2019. So to come up here and say that you got something from October,
I would go out and cry.
you have the sanitary survey was in October. That's a completely different document.
How did you get it?
And the date
So
that it had to be
here's the other thing.
How did you get it?
I have it because I
Here's the other thing. If Mr. Hayward can produce a license,
Yeah, really.
We're hiring right now.
we're hiring right now.
Do it. I'm with it.
I put in an application for a job a long time ago.
If you can produce an F1 and an S1, which is what you said, you have the F1 and an S1, we'll hire him right now.
Got it in your pocket.
I make a motion that we,
He'll be hired on the spot. We'll get the paperwork started today.
You wanna be hired on this?
if
You working?
Commissioner,
I'm working, I got a job.
see,
if he has an F1 and an S1,
That was the requirement, we had.
let's get him in the process. We need him like yesterday.
Pay
Wait a
more
minute,
than
where
what
did he
you
get
pay
his
for
license?
the job.
Where did you
got
get
I don't care if he got it, I don't care where he got it.
Where you work? Yes,
Let's move forward.
I worked under Ed Ward.
Really?
I worked under the, thank you.
Why did you come here?
next, go on order,
I got thrown out.
next on the agenda, thank you. Next on the agenda, resolution lawn maintenance service for 2019.
Yeah, go get
Thank
your-
you, Mr. Ice, Commissioner Ice. City of Ben Arbor is responsible for lawn maintenance, city home buildings, parks, vacant lots and properties. Question proposal was issued by the city in March 2019 for parks, city-owned lots and vacant property-owned lots. The city received responses from Hadley and Sons, Alvin's Lawn Care, Jenkins Lawn and Landscaping, Jack Campbell's Maintenance and Lawn Care Service. Recommendation that the Personnel Finance Committee recommends to the full commission authorization to enter into contracts with Hadley and Sons, Alvin Lawn Care Service, Jenkins Lawn, Jack Campbell's Maintenance and Lawn Care Service, I'm missing one, Hadley's, Alvin's, Jenkins, and Jack, for lawn maintenance in the city of Ben Arbor for the 2019 season.
Thank you. All right, okay. So we have four companies.
Correct.
So I know we have the parks now gonna be included in all this.
Mhm.
Right. So how do we divide the work of how you will, some kind of system, or how would you
If you-
equal it?
If you look at the bid, there's a bid response that was attached in there.
Okay.
And each one was asked to bid on specific parts. So based on the dollar amounts that were submitted, they would then be given that according to the bids that they've submitted.
Commissioner Singleton.
So on the vacant lots, it look like all of them did something with vacant lots.
Correct.
How would that system work? Do they, vacant lots go on rotation or?
The minimum in the requirements was that they be cut every 2 weeks. And that would be what the rotation would be. Unless that we get a season where it's just, the grass goes crazy. But every 2 weeks has been pretty much standard. If we have a dry season, then we scale it back and go every 3 weeks.
So they basically on a as needed basis.
Correct.
So just in case, we talked about earlier, just in case the summer program with the youth goals. And we're able to utilize some of them, so that would probably cut down on some of the need.
It could potentially do that. Last year, we spent $86,360 cutting grass with parks, with abatement, as well as city-owned lots. $86,360 for 6 months.
That was,
So, I mean, I know one contractor said he made 80,000, so the rest of them.
Yeah, I don't know how he said he made 80, but that's, because we spent 66,000 on city-owned lots, so how they made 80 and everybody else made 6, that's, yeah.
Maybe he was bragging.
That could be possible. Yeah.
Who is that, how's that handled? I mean, is it handled through public works, or is it handled through, who calls them up?
That would be code compliance, because what happens is on the abatements that are needed, code compliance would then cite the lots. Then once the lots are cited, then if they don't comply, then they go back, they call, put a list together, then they call and say, hey, I need these done. And that's how that would be done.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Several questions. One, just going back over the posting, where were the postings? Because I know there were some companies that were looking to try to go into business with the city for this upcoming year. Particularly, I know the Moores and another Ben Harbor company. So when was the posting, and its locations were the sites that were used? Two, are any of these groups actually Ben Harbor based in terms of the city? I know before there was a lot of Barron Springs and outside of the city use, so I'm wondering where they're coming from. And the final piece was, Honorable Chair, was that, okay, is it, once the bids were taken in, that there's like a fixed amount per lot and then a 2-week rotation, or because there's also in business, you can say, okay, we're paying this per lot to cut, and based on the trend in the past, and it can average out 2 weeks or whatever, that's out, and then the companies have to see if they're going to take that or not. What was that process?
Yes, I'm looking at the bidding process right here. You can see the city-owned lots, parks, City Hall, Carl Brown Business Center, Hillside, and the prices is with it.
Right, those are the bids that we said this will pay this amount?
No, that's what they said. That's what they said we do the work for.
Right, that's what I was saying. That my statement was that that the city saying, okay, for this service, this is what we're paying. But otherwise, I know you can try to take bids to see if you can get the lowest bid. The other thing, when posted and location of postings.
So this was posted in City Hall, this was posted on Indeed, this was posted on the website, this was posted in Herald Palladium. It was posted pretty much in the general public.
And the company's locations?
3 in Ben Harbor.
Yeah, 3 of them are in Ben Harbor, and 1 is in, I think Jenkins is in Berrien Springs, if I remember correctly. Either Berrien Springs or Eau Claire.
We said Ben Harbor, we talking about just 4902, we're not talking about city limits.
This is 4902 because none of these are inside the city limits. They're all outside. All one township, St. Joe Township, 2 in Benton Township, 1 in St. Joe Township.
Commissioner Adams.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. When it comes to our lawn maintenance, and we can't afford to wait, because spring is here, the grass is turning green, and as it is, the city is a mess. Because it looks like somebody has gone throughout this community intentionally and made a bigger mess. That's what it looks like. But my thing is, when it comes to our lawn maintenance of those that we give a contract to, I think that it's very important that we start looking at and asking for the machinery that they use. Because if they don't have the machinery to pick up as they cut, we should not be awarding anything. It's just like the quality of work. We got to just stop settling for anything. And as long as some of them has had the contracts, they've had enough time to be better. You can go into some of the communities when grass cutting is going on and it's a mess. Because you cut up all the paper and left it and it's in the street.
And everybody.
I mean, I'm with my husband. Would you go order that thing and put it on that lawnmower? I'm getting too old to be out here doing stuff. Anyway. But seriously,
Right, you rest good.
something, the type of machinery that cleans up as you cut. And we gotta stop settling for less in a whole lot of different areas.
Thank you, Commissioner. Is that in, oh, look.
One of the things that we have to also be cognizant of is that all the lots that are being cut in the city are not the city.
Okay, and that's another thing. Are we cutting land banks?
No.
Okay, are they contracting? There's a lack of communication. There's a lack of communication with land bank, and we need to have that discussion, because if they are paying somebody, they can pay the city of Benton Harbor, and we can make sure that these contractors cut theirs as well. And they ain't gotta worry about more intruders in our city, because we don't know who doing some of this dumping, okay?
Yeah, you got the land bank, you got the treasurer, and you
And
also have the private individual.
we need to have a communication with those entities and come together on one page. Because whoever's been cutting theirs, I'm sorry, through the chair, whoever has been cutting some of the land bank's properties, because there are some over in our area that, for real, you want it, but you won't give it.
Point of order, here we go.
They make a mess. Whoever contracts with some of the land bank's properties with the county or the treasurer, whoever it is, yeah, they leaving a mess. So we need to have some dialogue with them, and it's not too late. If we could do something, City Manager Watson through the chair, to send out a letter or make some phone calls and let them know that we are willing to give our lawn service guys the task of, they just need to cut their check. We're gonna be more diligent in the way we do things.
Commissioner Henry.
Do we have the parks covered with these forms?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
The parks are in there as well.
They are.
Yep.
And will we be paying more than $86,000 this season?
This year, it potentially could be more, because last year we didn't have parks.
Wait, Mr. Commissioner.
We didn't have the parks last year, Commissioner.
And
Well, she
I kind of did peruse the bids. Who got all the parks?
So if you look at it, the low bid on the parks was Jenkins Lawn Care.
That's the one in Berry Springs?
And
I believe so. I know it's All Clear or Bering Springs, one of the two.
Okay.
and Hadley.
Now,
That's some parks.
now, if these companies are making money off the city, shouldn't they abide by the hiring of city residents? Thank you. Should they not be required to hire city residents?
The majority of these gentlemen, having worked with them, do hire city residents. 90%, 95% of what they employ are city residents.
Is that a requirement?
It is, but that they do it irregardless of the department.
I know, but I need to know if that,
Yeah.
if that's a requirement.
Yeah, we asked them to do it, they bring on more people, but they already employ
Of
city
course, I
residents.
know that.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Henry. Ms. Kennard.
Thank you. Thank you all for giving me a chance to speak just for a minute. I won't hold you long. But I'd like to ask the city manager, what do your inspectors do? What is their job?
As it relates to,
As it relates to anything? I mean, aren't they the ones that if the grass is over a certain height, they put some type of a marking?
that's one of the things they do.
That's one of the things they do.
Yes, ma'am.
Could they possibly go as these people that are targeted for cutting the city property? Could they be inspecting behind them to see if they're doing their job? Because when you hire people, there has to be some accountability to see if they're doing their job right. And when we have, our city already looks a terrible wreck. There's a lot of things that need to be done, and there's a lot of money going out to have things done, but it's not really appearing that it's a professional job or this kind of money to be paid for the sloppy jobs that's being done. So I want to know if the inspectors that I saw the budget that they had for it on the screen here. Isn't there enough money put in there that they could cover by going by to see if these lots have been cut in certain areas on certain days? What type of a job? Is it a clean job? If they have been done?
They do that.
Because I was complained about last year because I just happened to have a garden in that area, but he said I was stalking them and they were cutting the grass over there, and he complained that, his men complained that I was watching them. I mean, am I supposed to close my eyes if they're in that area when they're cutting the grass? But I was accused of stalking. So if the inspectors can come out, why would they be worried about me even seeing if they're doing their job right?
That I can't answer.
No, maybe you can't.
Why they would be worried about it.
That's
As far as what the inspectors do, the inspection department, code compliance department, goes out, they tag various lots.
Right.
There is in the property maintenance as well as in the city's code of ordinances, there's a 72-hour time to abate them. So once you get that notice, so if you get it on Monday, they go back on Thursday to see if it's not. That's when they give the information they get a list together to then give to the contractors that we're talking about to go back and do that. Then once that's done, they go back and look at that and give a report of what's going on there.
Well, I know down here by where Broadway and Pipestone takes place, you know what a B&H store is?
Okay, Broadway and Pipestone.
Okay, in that little curb there, in that little corner where the store is, there's a vacant lot there that was being cut. There was paper and everything all chewed up and all kinds of junk. And it was cut by someone that you all had hired to cut. And I'm a stickler for when I see trash looking even worse than it was before it got cut and it's everywhere.
On that corner, because that's the whole big area.
I know who cuts the area.
Yeah.
I already know, but I'm sure you know.
Again, you've got people who cut from multiple places though, again.
I saw the person while they were cutting, and so I saw who was cutting the area.
But again, like I said, you have these individuals, some of these individuals cut not only for us, but they cut for the county as well. So they
That's cities, that from what I understood, that belong to the city.
Which one? Again, what's the lot?
Right here at B&H, right into that little curve of that street where the B&H store is. It's a house right here. Next to that is the alley, it goes through a little cut there. I can always point it out to you. But that lot there, I'm almost sure that that's city.
Okay.
I think she's talking about that. I know, I've seen it too. It was a lot of kitty corner. Commissioner, my name is Dwayne. See, just a lot over there, kitty corner from, the street ministry right across there. Like not on this side, but across there, grass is about 10 feet tall, somebody's out there trying to cut it and left it worse than it was before. But I understand exactly what she's saying. But two things real quick. One, I think that we should mandate that after they cut a lot, they take a picture. I mean, with modern day technology,
Yeah.
modern day technology, I'm gonna wait till Mr. Duncan get done and I'll go ahead. Thank you. All right, so we'll take a picture. They should take a picture before and after of the address that they cut when they submit it with the list of being cut. 'Cause what's happening is, you know, you see that billing list and some lots might not be cut.
Yeah.
All right? Point number two I wanna make, and I don't think that one contract should be getting fat off the cat.
Yep.
You know, I watched that pay list, and it's no slap to anybody, there's nothing, bad about anybody. But I think that if we have contractors that are out here doing the same thing, I think that it should be cut up equally and not, let me call Joe Blow because it's an emergency. Last point, this contract every year should come before the commission until we hire people to do this. The reason I say that is because this contract, and I would, if we did have somebody in finance, this contract far exceeds. Only other contract we got like this out there that I know of is with the assessor's office. Well, I don't know if that's not that's an employee, with a trash. You know, I mean, you have an outside contractor that's doing this work. So it should come before the commission. Then we designate and divvy it up. But I don't think one person should be getting fat off the cat. Third question I have, has anybody been notified that they got the contract? Because if so, we back to where we had Monday night, when we putting the cart before the horse. And if the contractor's already been told what they're getting, and we haven't voted on that, then I would have an issue with that, because how can you tell somebody already they got it, and it has not been approved by the commission with that set amount? But I would ask of this body that we make sure we give everybody equal, because I mean, all these all these lawn care providers trying to survive. And if some of them are willing to pick up the paper, pick up the wood, pick up the branches, and not just running over and leave grass all in the street, going down the drains, on the sidewalks, not blowing, just running down the street like they driving a car on, like they driving a car with a true turn lawnmower. I think that we should give everybody an opportunity, especially the ones that are leased in 49022. Because I remember not long ago, what's that land cutting business that was out there cutting out, I don't mean taking over no time. Who? Harborshine was out there at the park, and they said they couldn't handle hardly the load out there. There was so much trash during the week and stuff that they came back, that park and services the next year and said, we need to get them more money to cut that grass. So if they got a raise out there cutting that grass, I want to know how much they were making out there, because I don't want to undercut the guys we got out there now, because if we got the parks too, that's going to be a lot more money, and if we only got, I know I see the manager, he's a mathematician, but I wish I could see that number, because some months I've seen $8,000 bills just for one contract, and that was hitting like 3 or 4 times. I seen that. And we had a couple $2,000 bills, $3,000 bills from other contractors every month. Yeah. We were paying more for landscaping than we was for attorney fees, and you know that's how. You know, so I would want it to be cut up in thirds or fourths or whatever. Everybody have certain amount to be made. You know, and I don't have no lawnmower. I don't stand to make no money. I got enough to cut my own, and that's it. And if I get happy, I might go across the street and cut somebody else's. If they get happy, they might come cut mine. But I wanna see it divvied up. But the main question I wanna know, after saying all that, is those, take pictures before and after. There has to be, we have to mandate that. But number two, has any contractor been awarded or been told that they're gonna be doing a certain amount of work? Because if we have not voted on that, then if we voted down, then we might be liable because somebody can come back and sue us. I mean, they can come back and sue us for breach of contract. I'm sorry, not liable, breach of contract. So if they already been notified that they're gonna get a certain amount of the pie and we haven't voted on that, then I just wanna know that. Now, I appreciate your time. Thank you, Honorable Chair.
Good man, speak on that.
This is before you, because in order to do a contract, you have to have the approval of the commission. The last time that this was done, it was for a 2-year period that ended in 2018. So that's why it's in front of you now. No contracts have been signed, nothing has been done. And like I said, we have contracts that have been done and executed over the last 4 to 5 years.
Have they been notified though?
I haven't called anybody.
So nobody's been notified? Thank you.
Mr. Hadley's sitting right back there, you can ask him. Have I talked to you?
No, I would
Chair.
like to say something.
Jerry, go ahead, sir.
One thing I want to say as far as the lawn cutting in the parks is, I guess that goes along, the same people be doing the garbage also?
No.
Be doing the garbage pickup? No.
So it'll be different people doing the garbage and cutting
Yes, sir.
grass?
Yes, sir.
Has that already been established who will be
No.
doing it? No?
No, sir.
That being the case, the concern that I had is that if you're doing garbage, say like every 2 weeks, and somebody gives an event in between, then you got a lot of garbage, but we don't know where to take it. So it's left there for like another week, and by that time, it's all over.
If you don't mind, Commissioner, last year, I think it was last year, we had people who did it on a daily basis.
Right.
Because you can't let the garbage sit in those parks for 2 weeks. If you do, it'll be horrible. So again, it'll be on a daily basis. The only time that it'll probably be a little iffy is on the weekends, where you may have an event that somebody doesn't schedule and we don't know. But if we know that we've got a scheduled event, we make sure that we have somebody to take care of it at that point. Because part of the process is they pay a deposit for the purposes of making sure that the park is clean following their event. So if it's not, we don't give them their deposit back.
And tell them, please don't call me and ask me for their deposit.
Okay.
Hello. We would like to thank everyone for the contract within the city. As far as like photos, I can understand the concept, but if we were to go there and take a photo, that would actually take away the city inspectors from going out there. We actually wouldn't get paid. The city, we don't get paid unless the city inspector go and check. Now, if the city inspector chooses to say, well, whatever passes, passes, that's that. But as far as like the quality of work, it should be something that's hand in hand with the city inspectors as far as like the landscaping aspects. Photos will only work if you got something, if the inspector have a problem, he go out and see something wrong, he would take a photo. He would then email the guy. He would have to go back there and complete the job to get paid. That's per contract. That's stated in the contract. As far as like trash and sticks and stuff like that, I personally hire someone for that purpose, and it's someone from the community. The reason the reason why you wanna pick up the trash, it's not just for appearances, but your equipment getting tore up. You know, you gotta go through there, sticks and stuff like that. And what happening, Sons, does, we put everything in front of the line for the city to pick up, like the big sticks, the bricks and stuff like that. If we can put it in the trash bag, it's out of here. The city does not supply us to have dumping sites. So, hence being our bid the way it is. We bid a certain way for those mishaps.
Thank you, Mr. Hammond.
We need to have a lot of conversation.
Dr. Time.
Tony has.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the points that need to be clarified on, okay, as I looked at the expense that was stated, the Honorable Chair. Now, during the time of Tony Saunders, I know there was a goal to try to decrease the number of lots by the city, and especially, at that time, he had Mother McKennard and myself come in to what she supported the Fresh Starts Children's Gardens and the water supply. My role was to give it the Children's Garden to do the youth so they can have an employment thing and self-sustaining. The numbers should have been going down in terms of the lots that are owned. It would seem like the city is actually trying to hold on to lots if that amount is that amount. The other thing that's an issue was that of concern was that we were using CDBG dollars accidentally to ticketed lots when the CDBG dollars, so that inspector can only do buildings. And so I'm making sure for this year that that's corrected, that when it comes into lots. The reason also for the pre and post pictures was that there was also in the past allegation of people receiving $200 bills for their grass being cut, and the citizens were saying their grass hasn't been cut, but yet they were hit with a $200 bill that is forwarded to the city, that the city forwards it to the county, and it becomes a claim by the county, which adds additional fees to it, which can also hurt citizens, senior citizens in particular. The other thing that was an issue at one time was the notification of 72 hours, but putting a stick on the lot. And one time there, I guess that was to save money from doing a little postcard that actually went to the owner's address so that they would know. So, that was an issue. The other issue was, you mentioned a contract. So these are annual contracts, and these are not more than 1 year. I just want to make sure I'm just having these points of clarity. So has the number of lots decreased? Or if they're still the same, the rationale for holding on to the city lots? And when I know that we've had senior citizens who asked to purchase lots right next to their homes, and lots right next to their lots, and I know that they were denied, and I can say that as emphatically, and it needed to be bringing people here. The other thing is making sure that the CDBG dollars are not used to put ticketed lots, and I think I support the pre and post pictures for documentation, because there's been incidents also in terms of supposed to be removing trash, and people charge $200, and that's $200 a lot or $200 a pop when they cut the grass. So that's what you need to know, how poorer citizens are being hit with that amount of money, and any way to adjust the notification as a simple postcard versus how much does a stick cost, how much does the paper cost to print those signs, versus that's manpower and you pay that person per hour, versus a little print up on a little postcard sending that part, and these just yearly contracts.
City manager. Some of that.
Okay, try to see if I can remember all of it. Number of lots owned by the city. There are probably 400 lots that the city owns. Ballpark. It would be absolutely asinine to hold on to lots that you own, to own lots that are in your own city. that would be crazy because then there's no tax money generated from those properties. So holding on to them,
Mr.
Can I finish, please?
Yeah,
I
Anthony
appreciate it.
Towns.
I appreciate it, thank you. CDBG, code enforcement of the city of Benton Harbor can happen anywhere in the city of Benton Harbor, and it's an enforcement of the codes. So if the code enforcement officers enforce the codes of the city, which include tall grass, it is acceptable. You can do that. That is not, I don't know where that misnomer came from.
Lot,
That they're-
not building.
Once again, they can enforce the codes of the city of Benton Harbor. There is nothing in the HUD regulations that say they can only do buildings. That's not true. Thank you. The dollars for the cut. I would personally hope that we never have to issue any money for $1 a cut, because all we want is compliance. We're not trying to make money off of this.
Where the $200 come from?
So let me say this. If, as a property owner, someone has to be reminded to cut their grass, just to say that doesn't make sense. So if you own a property, you're gonna just leave it and let it go. If I have to remind you, it should be punitive. It should be. Because you're a property owner, there's obligations that property owners have for their properties. No one should have to tell you to cut your grass. The postcard method versus the stick method versus the notification method. The postcard issue is this. If you mail them to the owner of record and it comes back undeliverable, you have not notified them. If people don't accept the postcard and just leave it in their mailbox or leave it in their post office box, you have not notified them. The law has allowed us to do what we do, and in most municipalities, that's how you're notified. You have an obligation as a property owner to check your property. If you don't, shame on you. That's why we went to the methodology that we went to.
All right, so clarification, I know last year there was an episode where we had a lot of rain, and in between that, the grass, as you know, you guys, the lawn boys could attest that they, some of them could even get out to cut because you had rain in between. So if there's the grass is up, coming up, and it's raining, and we had the heat and the rain, and that still falls 72 hours. So on instead of 72 hours, it's day 5, day 6, and the grass hasn't been cut because of the rain. So is that flexible or non-flexible?
That is flexible. No one, again, this is not punitive. This is compliance. If there's been no arc type rains, no one would expect you to get out there with a lawnmower to try to do it. What would happen is, and we would be compassionate to that fact, that if they can't get out there to cut it, we can't say 3 days is 3 days and you just gotta cut it.
One of the things I'd like to ask, because I know that one year they had the street sweeper. We have so much debris that's in the crease of our streets. And if you're gonna clean up something, don't half do it. Do it right. So I had swept it up and pulled it out because the street sweeper was coming down the street. But I pulled it out enough so when they come, it wouldn't be trapped in the curb. And I was told that I could be ticketed for putting it out there. I had to go to the efforts of having someone to come and get it up and pay them to get that up that I had pulled away from the curb. I tried to clean out, you know, when the rain washes the debris, it goes to the drain and clogs the drain up. I was told that I could clean around the drain, but not out of the drain. Well, the stuff washes into the drain. So now, How is it that I can't do that? And one other thing I want to know, when I go down my street, I have went on both sides of the street and raked off the tree lawns. Because not everybody is conscious of how to keep things up. But I'd like to see May Street look good. And I have done that for years. I'm tired though now. But clean there, and I keep my curbside real clean. And I'd like to keep it cut. And I've paid a young man to help me a lot of times to do the tree lawns, to have it, when you look down the street, it looks real nice and neat coming down there. And the store's right there at the end, and a lot of times young people, not being trained, they throw paper around. But I just constantly go out and try to pick up and keep things clean. When I pick up this stuff and take it and bag it and everything, if you have a certain amount of bags, they don't want to pick it up. So what do? If I can even put it into a can, you know, a container, they said they don't have to pick those up. Just the can that they supply you, and you can't put yard debris in that. How do we keep up with the city? How do we help try to make our city look better? What do? I mean, only so much you can try to figure out to do. I can't go to a dumping site and dump it. And I'm not one of the illegal dumpers either. So what do I do, city manager? When I gather up the trash and debris and put it in a can, I got a can.
You can do that.
I was told that you can't do that they won't dump cans.
They will dump a can that is identified as yard waste.
So I write yard waste on it.
But you, and don't put any trash in it, because that's the issue, the trash, paper.
So I got to go through all of the trash that I pick up and down that street and pick out all the paper out of it.
The trash hauler, when they get to the landfill, if there is stuff in there like that, they will find them.
Right.
They cannot have that in there. That's the landfill. Yeah. You can put all the, if you've got a 96-gallon container for leaves and sticks and things of that nature, they will pick it up. Put yard on it, they'll do it. But again, they cannot pick it up, and you have trash in the inside of it, because there's a separate, at the landfill, there's a separate area that they dump that stuff. And if it gets in there, and then when they try to till it over and turn it over, it damages their equipment, and that's why they find the trash.
So if I were to put like sticks, a certain diameter in there, they won't take that?
They'll take sticks. They will take sticks, but like I said, they can't take any paper, any household waste, if you will.
Yeah, because it's a lot of stuff that's trapped in there. And it's you know, you want to try to make your community look right, nice, but it's really hard.
Yeah, like I said, I remember probably a couple. That's why they stopped going. Initially, remember, you could put them in black bags. Mm-hmm. They stopped doing that because that's what people were doing.
So are you going to tell me still that if leaves and everything is trapped into my drain, I can't remove that?
Here's the problem we have with that, Ms. Kennard. If you remove that and someone gets hurt, something happens, somebody trips.
I'm not saying go down in it. I'm saying that it's all trapped there. I got to pull that out of there. You got debris, you got leaves, you got even a tree sometimes.
Again, if you can get to anything without removing and getting into that storm.
I wasn't never talking about removing it, but I need to get something to pull all of this out of there.
You can do that, but you cannot remove that storm drain to get down in there. Because if you do, again, if something happens to our storm sewer system, there's a problem, someone gets hurt, we can't have that. Mm-hmm. But if you do everything that you're talking about in the storm drain state, we're good.
And I had some youngsters that came and worked with me, and they cleaned it out one year, even after I was told. I said, you all clean that out. We haven't had any trouble with the water filling up anymore. It was cleaned out.
I hear that our inspection department is going to be full staff pretty soon. So that is with expectation that they will go out and verify that the lots or whatever was cut in the proper way, picking up paper and all of that. So I'm hoping that that doesn't happen. But a lot of times I base what happens to me as an experience that I experienced, that yes, there were lots that was charged the $200 fee that weren't cut. And now, that was a long process where I had to go back to the county and to the city manager to get reimbursed. So it does happen. And like I said, I can only say that it happened to me, but then when I hear from my constituents, they call me and say, it's happening to me. So that lets me know that there's got to be a really serious way to have accountability with our inspection department, because that's where it starts and it should end there as well. So I understand we got a new code person that might help us do a good job. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Ms. Henry. All right, let's move this to the code part. Next on the agenda is non-union discussion, non-union employee raises and salaries. Discussion. I think the last time we talked about, we had a vote in, I think it's been about 2 years, 3?
I actually looked at the resolution, it was 2015.
15, we
Yes,
voted,
sir.
I think we voted it down.
Yep.
I don't know what the vote went, how it went. Can you tell me the increase, was that gonna be percentage wise?
At that time, it was 1%. It was 1% plus holidays was the recommendation.
So it's been a freeze on all non-union, so they don't get a cost of living, nothing like that? Is that legal?
Cost of living is not a requirement. No. No, it is not. We're required to pay your salary. The agreement is you do a specific job for a specific rate, your expectations are you get paid on that day.
What about like 6 months review or a year
Annual reviews, yep, all that is happening.
No money.
And see, the thing is that because of the way the charter is written, the way the code of ordinance is written, is that I have to, anything over a certain amount of money, I have to get approval from the commission.
Yep, all right, thank you, Mr. Chair. When we're looking at these non-union employees, would those include the finance director, assessor, or are those considered salaried union employees? Just trying to get clarification on who's your salaried non-union. Because new people coming in are not going to be in the union, correct? I mean, new hirees?
Depending on what position they come into. If you come into a public safety position, you are in the union.
Finance director, assessor.
Those are salary positions.
And union or non-union?
There is no union for them.
No non-union. Okay, so therefore, if their finance director, assessor are salaried positions, and so they would fall, and I heard what you said in the ordinance, but the assessor or the finance director, they would fall underneath the charter and be binding on those restrictions and what their benefits would be, right? So their job description would be per charter?
Their job description is they're identified as a position in the charter, the code of ordinances actually gives the job description, if you will.
Okay, all right, so when we're looking at them in terms of the salaries, Honorable Chair, that we're looking at, so in the charter, those individuals are classified as special entities, or are they just regular employees?
Special entities.
In other words, that what we were speaking about earlier, that when you hire this position, that position hires other people or bring other people in, when we were just speaking earlier about the water department. So is that assessor, finance director type positions, are those just an employee position, a 9-to-5 position, or are they treated as like a department or sub-department?
So the charter identifies, in the charter, in the code of ordinances, it identifies departments. The departments have department heads. The department heads have certain jobs that they do. There are 5 department heads that fall under the supervision of the commission. The rest of them fall under the supervision of the city manager.
Okay.
So, yeah, your department heads are individuals that work, depending on what their designation is, either work for the commission or work for the city manager.
Right, so I was keeping it simple. I'm just, Honorable Chair, in terms of finance director assessor, okay, so we'll just focus on A first, okay. So the assessor is a department, and that is a department head, and that department head acts separate from you with the hiring and firing of employees. Is that what you're saying?
They cannot hire or fire.
They cannot
They
hire
can
or fire?
recommend hiring and firing, but they cannot hire or fire.
Okay, so they're a department head, but therefore you just said they're treated, would be as a regular salaried employee, non-union. Is that correct?
They would if they were hired as such. There are, for instance, as the city attorney. City attorney is a firm that's hired, that has a point person. So the firm works for the city as its attorney, and they have a point person who acts as the city attorney. You have currently the assessor is a contracted employee that does not work specifically. They work for the city, but they're not an employee with the benefits and things of that nature from the city. They do it as an independent contractor.
But that, wait a minute, is that in line, I thought it is description in your charter, I thought that was that an individual employee. So is that so you're saying that the assessor in the charter is a subcontractor?
The assessor is a position in the charter that identifies that it's charged with assessing of the community.
Correct. But we're talking about employee status.
The state says that you can have a contracted person as your city assessor. So we have a contracted person who does not have, they're not an employee. So they don't have a pension from the city. They're not getting benefits from the city. They take care of that themselves, or some other means.
Right, so what you're saying, what you're is that, so this is like a non-union employee, that they're just an employee with the contract that punches 9 to 5, and that we pay them for their services.
They're a contracted employee that does that.
Okay, and yet they're a department head that does not hire or fire, or they can just make recommendations.
They have to make recommendations because as the charter states, that the city manager is the one who does hiring and firing. The department heads make the recommendation to the personnel director, who is by charter the city manager. So that's who does the hiring and firing.
Right, so that would be, okay, so the city manager is personnel director, does a hire and fire for that. So this assessor position, as you said, is when you use the word contractor, that's, in other words, we also in the terminology use vendor. And so when a vendor has a job to do, and that you fix time or hours that they have to work. So the assessor, is that a fixed position or ongoing renewal of assessor, or is this like a regular employee? Is continuing termination?
The city assessor is a position identified by the city charter that is filled by an individual or a contracted individual or a firm. But the position does not have a designation of being, it's just a position that needs to be filled.
Okay, all right, because I was looking at that I didn't see firm. I just want to be clear when we're dealing with positions of finance director and assessor.
So let's make this simple, because we're going round and round.
No, I was just getting a point of clarification that you have an employee, then you just added firm. That's what I understood. So in terms of non-union employees and salaried employees, that this individual cannot hire other individuals because they're not a director, only the city manager can hire.
Right.
Therefore, then that's it. So therefore, then that opens up the question of another salaried employee. Is the assistant to the assessor, would that be a salaried employee of the city or of the individual?
That is being paid for by the individual. We pay one person.
Okay, so one check is written for
That's it.
that person.
That's it. But I think, like I said, we're into a whole nother conversation.
But I'm saying, but is that
Question, the question about.
is that person working in the office is contracted to do that? No, I'm just, but that person's not, I want to know if that person is an employee who works with the assessor, who has access to sensitive information. Because it wasn't affirmed, so I'm just trying to find out who the employees are.
Are we talking non-union?
We're just talking about non-union.
Okay.
Salaries.
Non-union, so the non-union
Raises and
people.
salaries.
So here it is. The union people right now are all public safety officers with the exception of the administration.
Mhm.
The public works employees are union, okay? That's it. Those are your union people.
Okay.
That's it. And the water plant operators are union, and the persons that are out there, with the exception of Mr. O'Malley. And with the exception of Mr. O'Malley and the young lady, the administrative assistant out there.
Right.
Everybody else in the city is non-union or contracted in a position. So my understanding is we wouldn't be talking about the contracted people.
No.
We're talking about those that are employees of the city that don't belong to a union.
Correct.
Okay.
Commissioner Adams.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. I'm glad that this is just up for discussion because me personally, I can't, we just come out of a state of emergency. The word raise or height, anything on that level is just totally out of question for Commissioner Adams.
Correct.
Because back in 2002, when we okayed this $500 million development, more houses are going up. We're on the right road. But now is not the time to be swimming in the pool, grabbing money and handing out raises and stuff. We have too many streets to be fixed. I mean, I want to raise, I want to take more clients. I mean, we all going to feel the brunt of the city income tax, but to allow the citizens to hear something like this and to try to offset somebody else's, it doesn't sound fair. And I'm not a financial advisor or a finance director of any sort, but that's what it sounds like to thine ears. And I'm sure it wouldn't sit well with the citizens of this community. So please don't bring that into before me.
Thank you, Commissioner Isom. The reason why I brought this up and I asked you to put this on your agenda is in 2010, our non-union employees, like our clerk and some of the police and fire people, have not had a raise since 2010. As a legislator, that is appalling. We ask long hours of them. We ask them to take on more responsibility, and that's fine that we just come out of an emergency management thing, but we have a responsibility to offset some of their cost and time and to give them a raise. Not since 2010. It's appalling. It came before the commission, and the commission turned it down. Some of our police officers are non-union.
Yes.
Some of them are non-union. The guards at the courthouse make more money than some of our police and fire officials, and it is a shame. And I would like for the chief to speak to this. Last week when I talked to Commissioner Isom about this, I was hot when I talked to him about it. In fact, I was almost cursing hot about it. I worked at a job, started, it's been 6 months. I got a raise within the first 6 months of my job. Just like no, it has nothing to do with it. Where I work at is in this community as well. It's an impoverished city. We get funds just like everybody else. But our administration understands in order to keep good people, you have to pay them. It's appalling that this commission turned that down. We have officers taking jobs in other communities because we don't pay anything. I was reading in the paper, Brian Elliott, who was a former St. Joe police officer. I knew him, I went to school with him. 25 and out. I don't know what our thing is here, 25 and out after you serve. That should be the thing across the board with the kind of risk that they take in the city of Benton Harbor and the kind of things that's happening. We should pay top dollar if we can. I know that's not always the case, but we should make at least an effort. And we need to do something about that. We have a responsibility. We want to keep good people. We talk about what they're not doing. Well, I wouldn't work here. I would not work here. For the level of stress that people deal with here, I would not work here for any amount of money. It's ridiculous. And we need to take care of the people that we talk about, the citizens. They're citizens, most of them, and they take crap that we wouldn't take. I wouldn't take. If people talk to me the way that they talk to that clerk sometimes, I lose my job. This lady gave her, Ms. Kennard gave her a peace plant. She deserved a peace plant. The way she deals and talks to people in this community. She deserved a peace plant.
Piece of money.
Right, but we have a responsibility to give them a piece of the pie. And a piece of the pie means more money. For me, this is a fiery issue. One of our police officers, $15 an hour. I asked him, $15 an hour, he doing double duty. $15 an hour, that's shameful. When you make $18 as an entry clerk, as a guard for the Berrien County. Why should he stay? You know why he told me he stayed? He said, Commissioner, I love my city. He said, I live here. He said, I ain't going nowhere else. Even though he could go someplace else, make more money, have less stress, and deal with a lot less crap. He said, Commissioner, I ain't going nowhere. $15 an hour. My husband's lifelong job was to be a police officer. You know he could not be a police officer because they pay almost $6, $7 less? It's like, you can't take that job. You can't take that job. I'm sorry, I don't care what your dream is. We got 3 kids and college tuition to pay. You can't take your lifelong goal of wanting to do that. You can volunteer and be a volunteer officer.
On your own time.
On your own time. So we have a responsibility as commissioners to take care of our people. Just taking care of our people too, so we can keep them here. People getting jobs, paying better money, less stress, going other places. We training them, we paying for them until we can learn how to keep our people. You know, we're going to continue to have a lot of turnover in our departments. And we can fix that, and we need to. But I talked to, I think when I came in last week, I was talking to the chief. I'm telling you, I was cussing mad, y'all. Cussing mad. And I ain't even a person who cursed. Occasionally. But I'm not. But I was cursing mad when I came here. He was like, man, Commissioner Henderson, you own one. I said, yeah, I'm on one. Because I know what it takes to keep good people. People will pay good folks. We have a responsibility. Thank you.
Commissioner, Director, you
I
want to speak
want
on
to
that?
apologize if I may.
Director,
Public
again,
safety officer.
I'm not, you will speak on what you,
I can't in relation to public safety. I can't speak to the rest of the city. I do know as far as from us, I personally make $20,000 less than everyone else, all the other chiefs. I won't even mention how much less he makes. It's that much of a difference. And quite frankly, I've turned down opportunities that come to me I haven't even applied for just because I'm loyal here. But everyone ain't like that. Everyone ain't like the people sitting here. I don't have to be in this meeting. This has nothing to do with me.
all right.
He records it, and he's my deputy director of police services.
Right.
He here extra. He get not a dime other than nothing. So, with that being said, I have a mission here, and that's why I stay here.
Thank you.
I believe that we, despite how it sometimes may appear, that we are on the right track. But kind of give you an idea, just for public safety. Remember, we are both police and fire. All right. If you were to look at, I did a wage study of all the agencies in our area, as well as our comparables. We've been here long enough, so I won't go through all this. But the average, just police only, and she's correct, we got $15 an hour, $17 an hour, $18 an hour. That's our wage scale for people coming here. It's a shame.
Oh, that's why.
So the starting wage, the average starting wage for police only is $22.22. The average top out is $28.58. Our average cross train is our starting rate is $18.18, and we top out at $24.55. That's just for police only. That's a $4 difference. If you were to consider public safety, actual bona fide public safety like we are, and our comparables, Eastern Rapids, St. Joe, Grand Haven. Again, we are not those. And you said it, we don't have the tax base they have, but to give you an idea, the average just the average of public safety agencies is $24.29. The average top out is $31. Again, we're $18.18 and $24.55. So we've been trying to build, and Commissioner Henry and I have had a great conversation about this through the years, about trying to build a certain character. We believe in kind of not just getting employees to fill squad cars or uniforms, but have the character to be able to serve in Arbor.
Yeah.
This is the first time since I've been here that we don't have not one person on probation.
Right.
First time.
Right.
When we took over, we were interviewing every 6 weeks.
Was it once a month?
Constant turnover. I got different data on that shows the average stay per person was 6.9 months. We spent about $170,000 between recruiting them, training them, outfitting them, and off they go to someplace else. You know, Connie was snatching them, other places we were taking them, so we tried to do something different here. But with that being said, quite honestly, I got guys who are loyal to the city. They like working here. They enjoy the place. They've done a good job, you know. But at some point, I can't keep asking guys to work for peanuts and popcorn, giving them popsicles and expect unicorns to come. So, you know, I take it on the chin because I'm here because the Lord led me to be here.
Yeah.
With that being said, I do think the people who work under me and for me should have, I don't expect you to give us $20,000 raises, but at least show us that.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Not to mention that we got your home invasions down. Actually, we look at the numbers more than 76%. Because in 1 year, we had 356 break-ins in 1 year.
yeah.
Not to mention we got
Yeah,
zero.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'm just saying. If we want to talk about credentials, can't nobody touch me in this county. We'll protect you.
But through the chair, I would like to start off at apologizing because, especially to those that protect and serve in our public safety field. But shame on the top. That's why I'm gonna lay that blame.
Oh,
That-
please don't get me started. I
And I
promise you.
say that solely for the reason that I don't dip into people's money and what you all make down here, and I had no idea. I seriously had no idea. Cause you can't take me to a circus and give me popcorn and cotton candy and the unicorn ain't showing up. Okay? But not to say that this is a circus, but I thank you all and I do appreciate you. But I had no idea, and from what I've heard this evening, that is something that I would have to reconsider, at least for our public safety department. I don't know what people's pay is, it's not my business. And I'm not discriminating, I'm not discriminating, so I can make it my business as an elected official to find out. I'm just not nosy like that.
That's
Because
fine.
you see me looking out my window when the guys are up and down the street not doing what they supposed to. I'm Miss Kravitz that away, but I'm not into the city employees' business like that.
What I will say, I'll say this. Director McGinnis kind of hit it and started it. Every one of the administrative people on their R100, which is our status form, get paid for 37 and a half hours a week. We do that in 2.5 days. Easily.
And it's 8 o'clock now.
Oh yeah.
And then you still got a couple more
We
item agendas.
we
And
have
I
been
didn't
in-
I didn't
No.
say that to disrespect our hard-working city clerk.
I'm gonna go down there for a minute. because not only
Well, I'm gonna feel
is,
back here so it don't look
not
like I'm
only
talking.
is the public safety department underpaid,
Right.
everybody's underpaid.
And tell me about
Everybody's
it. The
underpaid.
streets are underpaved.
But let me say this. Let me go this route then. Let me try it this way. You got people who were here when the streets went down and make more money than the people who are here now.
Right.
But nobody's ever said anything about that.
Right.
This is a sore spot because you expect us to make miracles on a day-to-day basis
Right.
with nothing.
With nothing.
We have done, and I'm not saying anybody's Jesus, but if Jesus is feeding 5,000,
Okay.
we pretty good.
Now, don't make me come back.
Because here's the thing, Commissioner.
Uh-huh.
We have been, not I won't say neutered, but we have been restricted to be able to not do a little bit of anything.
Okay.
And I give credit and credence to those that are in the positions that they are. Because again, I know what you can go get if you were that kind of person. But the people that stay here are here because they love doing what they do and they love the community.
Yeah.
And they have a zeal for getting
Yeah,
things.
and I get all of that.
Commissioner, let me finish this though. I gotta get this one out. To do what we do and have to, it's tough. It's tough because you're home. And when you're at home, the expectations of you are a heck of a lot more than it is if you come in riding off a horse from the other side of the state. You come in, they ride you around town and everything is good. But here you get talked about, people stop by your house in the middle of the night, people catch you at the store, they catch you everywhere and they won't talk city business. With your family, at a sports event, after you done been here 14, 15 hours in a day.
Yep.
And like I said, the people here are here not because they're getting rich.
Okay.
They're here because they love what they do.
And I get it through the chair. But see, there's something else that needs to happen for this to be able to happen. We can't be holding up business and progress that, of people that want to do business with us to come into the community that would add to our tax base, that would add to water distribution, that would add to all of that to be able to afford a raise.
Right, so this, I think, the draft is the bottom line that what I've heard, Honorable Chair, and to keep things in perspective is one, in terms of the diminished tax base that we had, we lost a lot of revenue when the houses were demolished and became lots. And in all fairness, that the love to law enforcement, as a former law enforcement person myself, sergeant in the Air Force Special Security Police Force, $1 million budget for our chief. That's not enough, but that's the best we could do based on the revenue that we have. So we have to remember, you're coming out and you would like to do, but until you have excess, in terms of your tithes, it's not from your substance, it's from your excess, your abundance. So until we have the abundance to be able to bless people as a financial business institution, you have to hold the reins, because if you started doing that before, that led into receivership. So I think wise counsel, wise stewardship, that's what it says, that you have to be a good steward, that the time will come where you can reward those. But if you prematurely when people start businesses, instead of keep putting it back into businesses, start buying houses and cars and luxury items, they go out of business, they run out of money. We now are coming out, stabilizing, still, we're not in the ICU, we're in the step-down unit now, but we're not ready to be discharged home. I think financially we have to stay wise and good stewards. It's painful, but that's no different than what they had to go through the recession in the 60s. So I think I'm asking that we consider our financial restraint, and that in time, when there's access to be able to bless, the whole United States and other parts of the world are going through a financial crunch. So I don't think we can move forward like that.
Commissioner, as a city council member and somebody who would actually vote on this particular item, I would suggest that we move something on so that the city manager can put together a percentage of raise that each employee could get as a voting member of this, that will actually vote on this as a taxpayer, a homeowner in the city. I'm saying that we should consider something. 2%, 1% since 2010. If I was you, clerk, I'll go find me another job. Paying more money where people appreciated me. I wouldn't stay here if I were you.
Thank
Thank you. Who you
City
are.
manager, speak on that.
Again, there is, we can do an analysis to figure out what would make sense. I know it won't be, $10,000 for each person, but again, if the people were gonna leave, they'd have left already.
Right.
But I'm not going to ask them to be browbeat and abused either. There's been a lot of conversations after hours, or where, hey, I'm on my way out. No, it's gonna be all right. It's gonna be all right. And you can only cheer up a person so many times. But I'll put something together to bring how you want to do it. You want to bring it back to this committee next month, or you want to do it? Okay. All right, but I'll do that.
City manager.
Oh, they solved that problem. Oh, I was just going to Boise as a concerned citizen and also some other activities on the city. I would give them a raise.
Thank you, Jerry.
In the city clerk and all, for the reasons of knowing what they had to go through to reestablish a city that was under control of somebody else that had really no personal interest, or whether we make it or not. That's my opinion.
Thank you, Jerry. Yep. All right, next item. We have
Salary for the mayor.
discussion, update on financial director position. He resigned. Let's move to the next thing. Put in job search. Thank you. Okay.
Let me ask this question. There's a couple things that need to happen. Number one, if there's a letter of resignation, you gotta act on it. You gotta act on it. And then once that's done, what I would suggest is that then it is there's a RFP for, not an RFP, but a job advertising for that position that's concurrent with that acceptance. So once you accept it, if it's voted on acceptance, then one of the contingency would be immediately that a job posting be put out for that position.
Should we, that we move the letter of resignation to the full commission to accept or whatever, and then do
The job posting.
job post.
Okay.
But hold on. We can do this, but remember last month, we did what was stated, that we followed up on the letter and meeting and doing the discussion in the group. So that did take place.
Yes.
Okay, just want to make sure that we did due process.
Yeah, I did talk to Mr. Clark and he resigned. Let's put it there.
Okay.
Sure. Thank you. We'll move that. Next up, we have city manager evaluation. City clerk, so it'll be 6 months and I think May 28th. So it's time for evaluation. Can we get that started? The city manager evaluation. Make sure we send out the evaluation form.
You have to agree on the form, right?
Do we have? Do we use the same one? Or?
That's fine.
Use the same one?
Yeah, that's fine.
It had a scale, point scale or something?
Yeah.
So you wanna do it for the second week in May, or when?
We want to make sure all the commissioners get theirs and fill them out. Fill the evaluation out on time. Do they turn
Well,
back?
which meeting do you wanna actually conduct the evaluation? Second one in May, the first one in June, which one? Cause you said it's May 28th. March to 6
It'll be the
months.
6 months.
So probably the first meeting is in June,
Yeah,
is that?
I think, yeah, that'll give everybody time to fill out.
We need a whole month and a half to do it.
It's 6 months evaluation is,
No, it said 6 months or when we choose. You guys,
Commissioner, you gotta say something?
I think it needs to be done immediately.
It's the
The-
6 months
It does not
evaluation.
say just 6 months. It says 6 months and to our approval, anytime. It could have been 6 weeks, if that's what we asked for.
6 months.
Well, read it again. You got it in front of you?
6 months.
You got it in front of you, Chair?
Just a second, Commissioner Henry.
So I wanna hear you say yea or nay.
Just make sure you fill yours out, Commissioner Henry. Thank you, everybody, for staying around.
Took care of 2 public safety meetings.
Right.
Probably 3.
I need to be there.
People who hold them up.
We in business meeting.
No, really?
Yeah.
Remind me.
I got it up. There are people that don't live in the ward. I just go get 2 that do. I just go get 2 more. 2 out of 36. You got to look at 4.
While we waiting, we appreciate you, Carter. And I meant what I said. We don't give you no raise, find you another job. I mean that.
Yeah, go take her.
Oh, yeah, I paid my pay.
Go take her job.
Good people, it's hard, it's very hard to find. We can find, as we see with Public Works, 3 years. No applicants. 3 years. You know, it's hard to find good
You
people.
ain't got it now. Did he go get it?
Yeah, he went to go get it.
He went to go get it.
3 years.
Apply.
To apply for the water position.
Well, can we talk about it a little bit while he's going to get
I
it?
did read it, Commissioner Henry. I'm saying.
Okay, you heard it, but I'm gonna verify it again, but this is what I wanna ask. In the last 2 evaluations of the position of city manager, there's been problems.
That's right.
And I wanna make sure that we don't have them same problems again. So, what kind of grading system? Will we do it on 5 point is the best and 1 is the less, or are we doing it on 100, which is 100 is the best and 10 is the less? So we need to put that in place so we all know before it happens.
That's right.
And what happens if out of 9 of us, only 3 put in an application, and that's just
We make sure everybody turns.
No, you can't make sure.
That's the problem, that's the problem. You don't have any other-
Oh, no, there ain't no problem. There ain't no problem. Because if you don't participate,
I think it's his duty to participate. in
well, it might be your duty, but you can't make nobody do nothing, Commissioner. And if they don't come and do it, you can't make them do it. But you can set up a process that if out of 9 of us, if only 4 give the app, fill out the evaluation, then that is the 4 they get to count. The rest of them get nothing because they didn't participate.
I'm asking you, being a senior commissioner, will you ask all the other commissioners who participate.
I would be glad to do that, but you still got to put it in place, because if they don't participate, when they say that if you're not involved in the discussion, you can't vote, same thing goes here. So if it's only 5 of us then that's how you divide it up to find the average, by 5, or 2, or 3, or 1.
All right, so you gonna read us the evaluation.
It says the city shall review performance of Darwin Watson every 6 months, subject to a process, form, criteria, and format for the evaluation, which shall be mutually agreed by the city and Darwin Watson.
That's the one you read?
That's it, that's it.
I always get a separate document. I bring it to you and let you see it.
So we
But it's good with me, I go along with it like that. But the problem is, we gave him a contract, and we didn't get it signed for 8 months later. Now, do we count those 8 months? He was still here, working as an employee.
Well, we gotta sign on November 28th, so.
That is correct.
Go by that.
Okay.
So are we setting the evaluation to be done on the first meeting in June? Is that what we're doing, or what we doing?
And then when will you get the evaluation?
I can ask for it back that Friday before the, commission meeting in June.
Okay, when will you pass them out? So they-
Oh, past distributor,
Yeah.
I can do that, I can actually do that tomorrow.
Well, 6 months would be May 28th.
So, I mean, when, you tell me how you gonna do it.
Pass them out so everybody has.
Pass them out tomorrow, or is there a certain date you want them out?
What's tomorrow?
As soon as we can, yeah.
Okay, and then have them to return them back to my office that Friday before the meeting in June.
Sounds good.
Hopefully everyone participates.
Are you concurring with that?
I have to, if that's what you got the boss on this one. So, do we have an understanding on the grading system?
I think you said, city managers, you said is the grading scale?
Are we saying that we're going with the one we had the last time?
Yeah, was it 0
That-
to 5 or something?
That didn't work too good.
Yeah.
I don't have it in front of me, so I don't know what the numbers.
If you wanna talk about that
Yes.
in our personnel and finance in May, we can do that.
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay.
That sounds
Cause
good.
I don't have it.
Yeah, I don't have it, I just have this document, so.
Thank
So you can pass them out
I'll pass them
tomorrow,
out
and then
tomorrow, we can
everybody
talk
got
about
any questions,
the grading
they'll do it
scale
yeah.
in May, first
Sounds
meeting in May.
Sounds good.
Or-
Thank you for the breakdown. All right, sounds good. Okay, one more thing. Assistant city manager, I know we'll try this again, I guess. Well, I know we need to by charter to have assistant manager in place. Do you have any more, people or person to recommend to commission for assistant?
I made my recommendation, Commissioner. Yeah,
Try it again.
Put it back on?
we can do that again.
Try it again.
All right.
Let's go home, everybody. Thank you, everybody, for showing up